Okay, so for the next panel discussion, I'm going to be calling up on stage a few dignitaries, and the topic for this particular panel discussion is going to be getting the attention of today's customer. And to talk on this topic, we're going to be having on stage Mr. V. Narayanan, the CEO, Alliance Advertising. Can we welcome him with a big round of applause? Welcome, sir. Next up on stage would be Mr. Muralidhar T, Senior Vice President, Agency Trading Head, Mindshare. Joining them on stage would be Mr. Ranjith Kumar M, the Head of Marketing, AirAsia. May also request Mr. Vaasudev, Koppineni, Head, Content and Award Business, Arha Media, to join them on stage. I request Mr. Sathyajith Divakaran Nair, the Head of ManoramaMAX, to come up on stage. He's also the Senior General Manager of Digital for MMTV. Welcome, Mr. Sathyajith. And joining these gentlemen on stage would be our moderator of this particular panel discussion, Mr. Bharath Viswanathan, the COO of Fourth Dimension Media Solutions Private Limited. Welcome, gentlemen. Please be seated.
So the topic is getting the attention of today's consumer. So basically, we'll make it more conversational. And so what I've made is like, two people having varied perspective to talk. So I have luckily a client. I have two people from the content side, and I have two from the agency side. The panel can't get better than this. So just to start with, with considering that India as a market has like varied cultural, geographical, like linguistic, economic differentiation, how difficult is market like India to identify the right consumer for a brand? And so this, from a client's perspective, I would want Ranjith, and from an agency perspective, then Narayan would actually take the lead on that.
It's me versus Narayan, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you versus Narayan.
So thank you, Bharath. Thank you for inviting into this panel. Good to back in Chennai.
Yes.
So always love it, such a bright audience. While getting back to your question, so it's always difficult, or it always different for us to get to the consumer, right? It's about somebody who's potential to fly tomorrow, and you wanted to book online. So that is your exact audience, right? You don't know like who is that, and finding out that who is that is very difficult for us. So we've been trying multiple, it's always an hit and error. You try almost all the mediums. It's not just one medium, like one shows fit for all. So we try almost everything. Just one example I wanted to give it for a Tiruchi thing. Tiruchi Kuala Lumpur route. So Tiruchi Kuala Lumpur, we've been advertising in print and Tiruchi edition. So, but then when we finding out more, it was not Tiruchi edition, so we've been wasting money there. It's mostly the audience from Pattukkottai. There is one place close by Pattukkottai. That's 90% of Tiruchi flyers comes out of this particular place. So we moved out of this thing and we went and done a wall painting there. And that every segment is different. Something like when you look at Bangalore, Chennai, and Chennai, Bangalore, both audience are different. So it's not like one audience, I'm speaking to different. So it's like identifying them at different places. Their interests are different. So this is where we work with multiple media houses. And we try mostly, like most of the things. There is nothing that, your audience is not there. Your audience is everywhere. You filter there and get there, and you'll get there at some point. And it's evolving. And in India, you talk about, and I was just speaking to the numbers, it's just we are about an only flying audience out of 130 crore. We are flying audience is about just 2.6, 2.7 crore people. So which is about 128 crores is still underserved. So it's everyone is audience for us. At least that's how we go on. So that's how the Kabali started. It's not a targeted. So that's how it's for everyone. And we go all out and build that brand for yourself. Yeah, that's better.
From Narayan's perspective.
Good afternoon to all of you. Yes, India, it's easy to target the consumers actually, I think, because the data is there. And the starting point of any communication start with a deeper consumer deep dive, as we call it. So that is looking at data, and that is looking at a lot of information which we can gather from various sources. So there are 5 levels to it of how we identify the right consumer. Because as you rightly pointed, it is like 80% of the business comes from 20% of the consumers. So I think it's important to identify who is their prime prospect. So as I mentioned, there are 5 levels we do at the agency. So the first level is actually looking at available industry data, that is this IRS or TGI. So for in your case, we look at people who are flying out or using flights or traveling on airports. So whatever data we get, the industry research, we first do a demographic profiling of that. I mean, maybe with sources like TGI, you also happen to layer it with a psychographic perspective or from an interest or the interest that would appeal to them or what are their passion points. And there is a lot of data that's available which helps to fine tune, okay, these are the target potential consumer, and these are the low-hanging fruits, as we call it. So that's the first step. The second step is looking at the digital profile, because now digital is getting so much paramount, and it's a part. It's not. I mean, getting digital incorporated or included in the media plan is not no great. I think it's a must-have nowadays. So you look at the digital data, like there are a lot of campaigns, as you must have conducted a lot of campaigns on YouTube or on Facebook. So you collect all the data, you see how the plan was constructed. And generally the construct is using consumer cohorts. You target them by interest, like in many cases it's like in-market audiences. So you look at who is that audiences and what's the kind of click-through rates or what are kinds of view-through rate you get and which consumer cohort is responding better. So that is on Google data. You can use the Google Analytics data, and that's available to all advertisers. In fact, to all agencies who run the campaigns also. There's also a way to actually look at creating digital portraits, which is more from the social media perspective on Facebook and Instagram and on others. Like there are experts in the market whom we work with, that is Affinity Answers, who actually do look at how consumers have interacted on your social media handles. And with that, they create a digital profile looking at, okay, this is the prime prospect, these are the interests, okay, they are interested in gaming, they are interested in financial investments, they are stocks, or they are interested in auto. So that whole digital portrait is created using the digital data. So there are 2 parts. One is the traditional, which is done from the industry research. The second one is using experts and more of a digital profiling of your consumers. Third level comes in when you look at the client's CRM data. Like you will be, I mean, in specifically your case, Ranjith, I think you'll have a lot of traveler data. You have a lot of data of phone numbers of people, because no one would book a ticket without a phone number. So you have the phone numbers. And in many cases now, I just did a check-in. I was asked what is the PIN code, and you have the PIN code information as well. So you look at that data, you create lookalikes on digital, and you look at incorporate that data, and then you see who are the potential consumers. And this is using your own CRM data. The third level, or the fourth level as we call it, that is actually looking at sales conversion. For example, you would run these campaigns, and this was so much people responded, and so much people got converted, and this is the profile, like the way Amazon does it. Like you buy something from Amazon or Flipkart, you know who is a customer and what they search for. The entire profiling is available, and you can also track it, and the data is available. So that's the fourth level, which is more of outcome-based kind of identifying who is the most potential prospect or a prime prospect. The last level, which is the ultimate level, which I think, according to me, that's like a highest level in the Maslow's law, I would call it. So that's something which you must have seen is using the data sciences and using AI algorithms. Like, for example, the one which is done beautifully is Netflix and Amazon Prime, where you watch a movie, you immediately get to know, hey, you watched this movie, you watched this movie. So this is using data sciences and using real-time AI algorithm. That the model which is used in this case is K nearest neighbors. Use this algorithm, it's a clustering which happens. Okay, this is where your consumer set is, and this is where your low-hanging fruits are. So they are, in terms of the appeal, they are very similar to your core prospects, and then you can target them. So like how Netflix does, okay, you watch this, okay, you're likely to watch this more. So that's a real-time algorithm which happening. I think we are yet to get level, but yeah, those brands have done it, and I do see that happening very quickly in the next few years, given the way digital is transforming in this country. So a lot of data and a lot of this, and that's what you finally look at. It is not just like, as I think the earlier session also, it's not that, okay, you just give a plan and the plan is implemented. You look at a lot of data and analysis, and the main step is identifying the right consumer. If you don't identify that, I think the money is wasted. So that's my
But in reality, how much of disconnect is there in identifying the right consumer between an agency and the client?
Okay, there are two parts to it. One is the quantitative part, the other is a qualitative part. No, on quantitative part, it is data. Data speaks. There is no bluffing in that. So whatever the data says, the client has to accept it or kind of validate it. So that's on a qualitative basis, that comes generally more of this kind of digital portrait where you look at different data and look at a more a qualitative thing. That is some kind of, I wouldn't call it disconnect. I would call it as a discussion. There are discussion to see which approach to take or, which kind of choices to make. I think that comes in well there. And I missed one point. I think we urge our clients to start before you do any strategy or define what the target audience is. You conduct a very detailed or a kind of a social media listening audit. You listen to your consumers first. That's the first and foremost you need to do. You find out what they are talking about it in the digital space, what are their passions, and who is the consumer. I think that's the starting point. And I think many clients, I have been privy to few of the way, I think Nestle has set up a complete command center where there is data sentiments on a real-time basis, which helps to clearly identify the consumers and develop the kind of a targeting strategy, sharp targeting strategies based. That, in fact, it's also used for product development because that's listening. That's what your consumers is speaking about.
Super.
So that's valuable.
So now I move into Sathyajith and Murali. So basically, with technology taking over, so how difficult or easy that to hold an attention of a consumer in today's life? So from a content angle, like how do you do that?
Good evening. I'm Sathyajith Divakaran. I represent ManoramaMAX, which is an OTT platform. Just giving an introduction, background to what I'm saying. From our perspective, what is difficult about holding the attention of a consumer, we faced it very recently during the COVID times. Before that, there was a set pattern in the programming, and the audiences were also more or less, +5 or -5 kind of thing on the BARC ratings. And once COVID came in, there was a huge dearth of content because there was no content being created. At that time, we came out with a strategy of combining the audiences of both television and the OTT platform. What we did was we managed to create a show which was a game show, which we had the hosts staying with us so that they didn't have to face any of the COVID protocol problems, and we created content which was able to engage the audience. Because this was a content where people could actually win money by watching television. And what made it more interesting was even the end user who was watching the show was able to win money. So while there was a winning thing happening on television, there was also somebody out there who was winning the same prize money as the winner on screen. So that was the way we engaged audiences during COVID times. And that one show did really catapulted ManoramaMAX way higher than what the national average of OTT business was doing across India, and it also helped engage audiences which were otherwise not so keen to come to our space at that time.
So there is a convergence between the conventional media vehicle and the new age media vehicle. So that's what you mean to say. So what do you think that with technology going upwards, moving forward, how do you look at conventional media reorienting itself, to stay in this race?
So if you look at the television industry, there is content which can be cinema, or there is content which is the serials, which can be fiction serials, there can be game shows. And all of this is getting converted into content for OTT platforms as web series and things being more customized to the end user, unlike television content. I don't see it that way. I would like to see it as the end consumer has been the same, today they have more chances of choosing their content. So they choose content which is good for them. So it is up to us to think of a way how we can cater the same content to multiple users and bring in more users, not thinking of ourselves as a television channel or an OTT platform, but just as these are just venues through which we get the content across to them. So I think there is merit in creating content with variations. For instance, there could be game shows, like I said, where there is interaction with the audience, or there could be fiction shows where there are parts of the fiction which is getting more showcased on social media, so it is capturing that audience. There is a gist of the show which is being showcased in 30 minutes on television, and there is maybe another version which can be shown on the large screen. It is just up to creating the same content and allowing the end user to get a glimpse of it through different screens in front of the end user.
Okay. So from Murli's point of view, like how are the new age technology gap being filled by the current agencies today, like with the client expectations in mind?
This especially to do with attention, or?
Yes.
Okay. See, attention economy per se is a very interesting topic, and it is obviously not very easy to say this is what it is, right? Yeah, like what Ranjith said, consumers are everywhere today. The tech has given the opportunity or democratized the content for people to view it across wherever it is. Therefore, if you ask me, first of all, the question of whether the attention span have come down, I will say there is a huge demand for the attention span, which is important for us as marketers to see how we get them, right? That is one point which I want to look at. In terms of tools, there have been a lot of historic tools before. If you ask me 3 years before, I would have said an NRS, IRS, which talks about time spent, or a brand track, which I will say is more or less a surrogate, but not the actual this one, right? But today, with the tech coming into play, whether you have connected TV, whether you have the smart set-top boxes, the kind of data that is there in digital, which actually helps us to understand the behavioral pattern of the consumers. What is important for us is to see how we can correlate between the behavioral data and the historical tool that have been throwing, and how we can build insights for that, right? Like, for example, a lot of clients today say that when a consumer see a ad, what is the search pattern that's happening? Right? These are few of those correlation which we obviously get into play and see how, what is the attention span of consumer, how they are engaging with your brand, right? And other important point is, therefore, as a marketer, what is important for us is to understand what is the ability of a media to deliver a particular outcome, and therefore what is the task to the touch point. That is very important to identify and therefore deliver the result for the brand.
Okay. Moving on with Vaasudev and Ranjith. Somewhere down the line, do we take our consumers for granted, especially from a media standpoint? Like, you know, we rip content off completely, put it on same content in multiple platforms, and then we come back ripping that we're not getting the reach, we're not getting the penetration, there's lack of creativity, there's lack of ideation. So do we somewhere, like, you know, take a consumer for granted, saying that he is anyway going to come to me? So how are you addressing that from a new age medium like yours?
Good evening, everybody. Firstly, I think I should thank Fourth Dimension and Mr. Shankar and Mr. Bharath for having me here. Thank you. So, are we taking our consumers for granted? So, I would like to put this question in another way. I would say our consumers now have become very aware. They're much more educated in terms of what is available for them outside in the market. So, I think that is the first step that brands, in my case, I think it's audience is the consumer there, and we as a brand are churning out content for them. So I think now we have to step up and start thinking in terms of what is it that our consumer wants today. I think an alignment between the brand and the consumer has to happen. That is the first step that we should take in terms of understanding what our audience are doing. And also, I was very happy today because everybody was talking about the alignment towards data. So I think that's where the key lies in. Data-driven decision-making is where I think we should look at. Also, Mr. Ranjith was just pointing out the recommendation engine of Netflix. nothing but again certain data-driven decisions that are being made. So I think all of us should also step up from a content creation standpoint, all the media houses that are out here, and look at what is it that the audience wants now. It is no longer about, I think taking them for granted is a harsher word, but I think we should really understand in terms of what is it that they want and how do we align ourselves to creating what they want.
Okay. Ranjith, from a brand custodian standpoint of view, what kind of SWOTs do you do when you select a medium, considering more of content-driven decisions rather than quantitative decisions that you take?
It's an old saying, right? Your advertiser or brand chasing you with ads, and customers are running away from ads. So it's been always an rise, right? So that's been there for a while. But since most of us spoke about data and all of these things, so we also go through like all this process. So, like airline as I told, it's talk about more the data that we have, right? As an airline, when you travel between point A to point B, so we have all the data of yours, your emergency contact, and your date of birth, where on whom all you are traveling, your ex or your whatever, like those all data. Like if you are traveling with your family, we have as good as go and rob your house as well. That is the kind of data that we have. But see, similarly, like when we understand, when we go through choosing a medium for these things, like print also, like print has its own lifetime. So your print doesn't stays beyond about an 8 o'clock. We see a search as soon as when your print ad is there. So it has an effect. You can directly link to your call center volume, or you can go to and hit your website traffic. So similarly, your radio, for example, like it has specific drive time data. Or so end of the day, it is all that is how quality traffic that you are bringing in for a conversions. So that at every media level, we choose before putting on what content. So similarly, like from the data, like this thing. So from the check-in data, so we take this pin code level. When you are check-in, so we take all this pin code, and we are the airline who mapped your consumer with the pin code. So at the top pin code, you have an address also, like top apartments also, you can get a filter. So you go and advertise, there is a new medium evolved, go on, your TV is there, you advertise in those mediums. So which is, spillover is very, very less. Rather than doing a mass advertising, this we reduce. And we go more targeted ads, like, something with IRCTC for that example, like if your train is on wait list. And we can advertise there as well, that media is available. Similar to, when you choose something with Airtel. Airtel also similarly, like Google reads your message. The Airtel also reads your message. If your phone number or if you have a SMS of PNR inside, so you are in potential target. Last month morning you are in Chennai and afternoon you are in Bangalore, then you are a potential audience for remarketing into back to there. So that kind of data also we work with, and that is the level of at every medium we do evaluate.
So this is more between the content guys and the agency people on the other side. So while we talk about consumers, one inevitable thing is like, dealing with the millennials. So when it comes to dealing with millennials, especially in a new age vehicle like your OTT and your digital vehicle, so what do you do to stay relevant with millennials, especially one comes from an entertainment angle, probably a more easier option to hold the millennials. But when it comes to news, like how do you do that? And when again from an agency standpoint, where I want you to touch upon is there some sort of a matrix that is being developed, which is more relevant to millennials in terms of how responsive is a brand towards the millennials, because this is end of the day the target group that is going to be the front end consumers for a longer time. So we'll start with.
Yeah, so what we have seen is millennials, on our OTT there is both entertainment and news platform. For the millennials, the entertainment content, they prefer to consume shorter forms of the content. Anything longer than 5 minutes seems too long, they skip it. So we try to give shorter forms of the content which they can consume better. And the focus is more on, and this I'm talking totally related to the Kerala audience, the millennials seems to prefer comedy content. They seem to prefer kids on any of the shows. where there is some kind of banter going on between people, that is also preferred. This is the kind of content that, so we try to cull out content from the original content on television, which is similar to this, and we cut it out into 5-minute bits and put it out there so that people come and engage with it more. In terms of news, they are, again, more fond of just scrolling through and catching the news. They don't go into the detailed news bulletins. They only catch short forms, like just headlines or maybe 1 or 2 minutes of video, that's it. So we cull out the content as per that. So the same content which is on television, you'll get it on a different form on our OTT platform.
How is it for entertainment?
Yeah, I think just to add on to this, last few years we have seen India become the largest market for the millennials. I think our overall population, 37% of our population is driven by millennials. Is it difficult to grab their attention span? Absolutely yes. But they are also the front runners. They are also the first movers in terms of if you want to try and grab their attention or do some noise that is there, they are going to come to you. But the difficult part is how do you hold them to be with you? I think that's where the actual key lies in. And today they're really spoiled for choice when you talk about entertainment, right? They have opportunity to open any app at the touch of their button and move from one content piece to another content piece. So again, the biggest challenge that comes here comes back to storytelling. And I think it is content over everything, where if you can give the right content which can get them onto the platform and make them sit and watch the piece of content, then that's where your success lies in.
And from an agency standpoint, if you can.
So, see, the matrix of a brand score, for example, is not going to change whether you target a millennial, right? So that is what is very important is how the brand is associating with the millennial and what are the kind of personality traits that it really matches. The good thing is millennials are there in digital, obviously. Even though the ecosystem is very big, digital as an ecosystem, they are there heavily on digital and or the preferred medium is that. Hence, the kind of data that is there, whether it's behavioral data or whether the likes and dislike of the youth or their intent and the purchase that they do. Actually, all this helps us in terms of building a much better, an insight which helps us in terms of building a better plan for them.
Okay, so coming back to millennials, I have two famous dialogues. Okay, these are two different superstars. One dialogue is, Dawn ko pakadna mushkil hi nahi, namumkin hai. Matlab, it's impossible to actually get 100% reach of the millennial. The second one is a Rajnikant, en bhai, tajni bhai. So it's like they behave very differently as against the other consumer sets. So it's you have a very different media strategy where you have to target them. So we work with a lot of brands and a lot of in the agency and across different categories, FMCG, durables, technology, and there are some 5 learnings which we have. The first learning is that the communication needs to be very authentic. Like we are seeing where we have experimented and we have tested few campaigns where along with the TV campaign, we also add in a lot of content integration there. So whenever we do that, we see exceptional spikes in searches. In fact, when we do content integration in reality show, our products get stocked out the next week. So somewhere, I think a JRP campaign cannot be on a standalone. It has to be, especially for this TG, it needs to be mapped and overlap with a content integration. And content integration is media agnostic. I mean, it can be on any channel. Like if you do it on TV, obviously it's also going to go on Hotstar and it has to be going to the respective OTTs there. So I think we have seen a great response there. That's the first learning. The second learning is like this TG needs a lot of, I would say, an unprecedented level of customization and personalization. The messaging needs to be very specific. Like even when you come, as you mentioned, on news, they would not watch news across. They would definitely want news that would interest them, which could be maybe a Bollywood news or a kind of a celebrity news. So I think that content identification is very important. The third learning is, for this TG, you need to go completely audiovisual. They are not the print or they are not the kind of preachy or they are not going to go through written word. Audiovisual works better. And many learning, and you see the emergence of this TikToks and Moj and Takatuks of the world. It's all short video content, and it is booming, and we see great responses in those campaigns. So user-generated content is a must. I mean, almost we have data which also says that 50% of consumers find the user-generated content more authentic, especially millennials. And if you also map it with the purchase behavior and the way they go about the consumer journey, they look into these reviews, they look into what people are talking about. So therefore, a brand has to not only do a TV or not a digital branding campaign, but it's imperative or it's essential to also look into the ad reviews, the social, as I mentioned in the earliest, in my the earlier question also, that social listening and where reviews and that play a paramount role in deciding the product. So that is the third learning. Fourth learning is like they are fine to pay a premium. They would pay a premium. So obviously your communication or the imagery, the perceived value of your communication should be so exponentially, or like in terms of it should be like a lighthouse strategy that it should really stand out. I think that would work. The perceived value supersedes the monetary value. So they would pay a premium, which is what you see in all the mobile phone. It's just picked up by millennials, and it sells like anything. You don't do much advertising. You have a launch ad. I think that's been our learning on technology brands specifically.
But don't you think in reality, somebody like a Ranjith engages with you, and ultimately you're decided based on the quantum of GRPs that you'd get on a plan? So don't you think that you lose an emotional connect with the audience just trying to buy quantity?
See, that GRPs is a must. So that is a base level GRP, which to econometric modeling and whatever detail analytics you can find out, okay, this is a base level GRP that's required. And obviously there is discount, and there are other, I mean, from that way to try to ensure, or maybe in some way it could be a combination of digital OTT plus TV plan, which gives much higher reach than the TV plan alone for the same budget. So somewhere you use the technique, but we would urge advertisers to have a test and learn approach. It's like how there is a A/B testing in digital. There has to be a A/B testing on content versus TV ads. So we are seeing great response. In fact, many clients, in fact, for a very fiercely contested market like skincare, we're seeing that integrations work have a disproportionate value or a disproportionate outcome as against a TV ad. So this has been some learning.
Ranjith, do you measure outcome, or do you measure like ultimate deliveries from the agency side?
Just to add one point to what Mr. Narayanan was saying was, I think content also supersedes on the cost. The moment you give them good content, they would not ask you how much you would want to pay for the content.
I've never seen a situation like that.
It is happening today, and we've recently, I mean, whenever we've done our marquee shows like Unstoppable, and we were up on full price. There were no discount coupons, nothing happening on the platform. We've seen people come onto the platform and really take over the platform. And there was this phase when we had actually marketed our discount offers off late recently, but it was not supported by great content. We didn't really see much happening at that point of time.
So Ranjith, from your point of view, how do you look at it?
From our brand perspective, like it's just more a performance is what we look at it. Like it's purely like, it's a very low cost that you have, right? And you have a marginal cost as a marketing itself. We don't have an experimentation of, and there isn't root level also, right? You don't serve for all the nationwide. We look at spillover. So purely, if we can map it to how much seats sold or how many load factor or how many flights or how many flight searches. So that's what not every spend, that's what we count.
So a quick question on how do you deal with situations like this? To Vaasudev, today's consumer expects what he wants. So how do you deal with the situation? Today's consumer expects what he wants. So how is your platform delivering to that?
Oh, absolutely. I think I'll again go back to answering that with data. Today on our platform, we know at what point a consumer is actually starting to engage with a content piece, and at what point is he actually stopping that content piece. Is he even coming back to watch the same content piece, or are we losing the consumer away for sure? I think the expectations and the demands of the consumers have increased multifold because, again, as I was saying, they are spoiled by choice. Now, language is no longer a barrier. Thanks to COVID, I think we've started consuming content from all across the globe. I think Narcos was some in other language, Money Heist was in other language, and we all started consuming it. So I think now with people being exposed to that quality content creation and that variety of genres that are available out there, their expectations have really increased. The other thing that we can also see today is the other conventional mediums, from your first question, the other conventional mediums which are chalking out content today, it's really not firing, be it the theaters or be it in the television medium, because now I think the consumer knows, he's very aware, he's very educated in terms of what is available out there. You can't really take some content out, like you were saying, from somewhere else and give the same kind of content to our consumer today. So it has become really demanding, absolutely. But reading data and taking decisions from there is also helping. Creating cohorts of the kind of consumer that you're talking to, what does he want? Does this particular set of audience watch short form content? So how do we create that short form content and serve it out to them? Do these particular set of audience need long form, which is episodic format? So how do we give that to them? Or do these particular audience who are very used to watching content from the television, do we just acquire content from there and serve it out to that consumer? So it is very important for us to understand our consumer and then plan accordingly.
And Sathyajith, consumers' expectations are rapidly changing.
Yeah, offhand, I can just remember a couple of instances, right? Obviously, they are very demanding. They expect the world. And we have tried to keep our OTT platform as close to the standards that we see. It's Netflix, by the way. And but having said that, all the comments that come give us value in terms of taking us towards giving them the final experience. But having said that, they're not even willing to wait. Like when they ask for a new technology, it takes some time to get it in place and put it out there. But they're not willing to wait. And by the time you bring in the technology that they're looking for, you have a lot of churn, then you have to work on getting them back and all of that. So that is a problem that we face these days, yes.
And Ranjith, consumer loyalties are dwindling.
I didn't get it. Like
Consumer loyalties are totally dwindling for a brand. So absolutely, they are not loyal to any brand anymore. So how do you deal with a situation like that in your business?
I think you might all had this Tata New app by then in your phone. It was one of the biggest campaign as Tata has done, and we are the only participating airline within the Tata New system. So the ecosystem works like this. See, for example, if you put on average 5% yen on any loyalty, you need to do a minimum 20 transaction to get one free thing. So it doesn't exist. So your consumer, like by the time, the frequency of flight is also, you may not take 20 flights in a year. So technically over the period of time, either CV returns or a jet mile and all of this thing, it doesn't fetch you other than a few glasses and few watches, nothing. It's never, I don't think, never ever upgraded thing. So that's why we have this program of Tata New. This thing, it's a new pass. Arbitrage is simple. So it's like 1 coin is equal to 1 rupee. So you buy a flight, and like by the time you land, you may get a certain coins. While you are flying back, you have a coins there at the airport. If you find a Chroma store, buy a headphone or buy something, or you find a Starbucks, have a coffee there. So that's a new system. So or you want to buy a medicine, buy it through 1mg. We want to deliver something at something, so you big basket. So this is how the whole ecosystem of bringing in one number, and there is no loyalty number as such. So this program, we don't want to put somebody LAIL number, some FFP33 and all of this thing. It's just your mobile number. There is no additional. So just log on to with your mobile number either to Tata Neu or any one of the participating brand, including AirAsia code in. You'll get to track what is my past orders with 1mg, whether I'm a member or what medicine I bought it. So you can get track of this thing. And today with that, thanks to this loyalty, and we are one of the largest loyalty base in the country with an 8 million database. So today I have a potential audience, probably not even interacted with my brand, but those might be stayed with Taj, that might be transacted with Chroma before. Those audiences potentially has a Neo coins. So all I need to go and convert them, bring in. So bringing them and convert. So this is a new age of this thing, because nobody wanted to keep their point. Its loyalty become like, your cashback is another thing. You get a cashback after 90 days, 120 days. Nobody has a faith in this thing. So these are like instant edifications when you get it, and that's a way which we think.
So Naru, how do you build top of mind for a brand with all these in mind?
That is the most expensive commodity, I would say. It is easier achieving sales. It is easier achieving through performance campaign. You can You can sell your product, and that's all is easy. And even in spont, awareness is easy. But top of mind, it's a tough commodity to actually buy. So, because we also feel that top of mind, from whatever data we have seen, correlates a lot with SOV, or being versus competition. I think it's relative there. So if a brand has a first mover advantage, obviously the top of mind was like in the previous discussion. Of course, Asian Paints will have a higher top of mind than other brands. So it's not easily going to come down. So therefore it is important to be very visible, or it has to be consistent advertising. Like, you have to have a purpose. Like, I liked one point in the previous session, Rajakji has mentioned that if there's a purpose, then the youth and come together, and then it helps to build the brand in a very, very kind of authentic way. So it's also the experiences you build with the brand. Like if the consumers are loyal to, like you said, 26 million is the air travelers, and out of which 8 million are loyal. That means it's a great achievement. I think somewhere you have delighted your customers, you have created that experiences. So I think it's a combination of that experiences. So I would say that, okay, building top of mind is tough. It's not an easy task. It has to be consistent, and you have to do a lot of analysis and also advertise with a purpose and ensure that it's more the customer experiences which matter in that. So from SOV is the standard media way we look at it, but I would say we need to transcend it into SOE, which is share of experiences. I think that would help build top of mind in a fiercely contested market. Or for a new brand, it's easy because you are the only player with the first mover advantage. So it's much easier. But in a fiercely contested market, it is a tough one, and you have to work very hard on it.
So Murli, as an agency trading head, what will you choose, quality or quantity?
I think we need to have a separate session for this. In fact, I want to answer even the last session. First of all, this quality and quantity is very subjective. Let's be very clear. It depends on how you are going to define it, right? For a broadcaster, quality and quantity is an impact and a prime time. But what does it mean actually? What does impact mean for the brand, right? What is the outcome that it brings? So for advertiser, it means more in terms of getting the right kind of audience, being at the right ecosystem, getting the audience basis the kind of ecosystem that we present. If I go by the other option, what we were talking about, only content presence. So it's not that today advertisers are not buying quality, like whether we take a KBC or a IPL, there are brands who are present, but they are present because there is a response or an outcome that they are getting out of it, right? So hence, what is very important is, how do we define this? What is the right definition for quality and quantity, right? That is more important. So if you ask me, both are important, but provided that gives me the desired outcome for the brand.
Thank you. It's got us a good topic for the next session for us. Thanks, wonderful. I think we're running short of time, so thank you all for making it, and thanks for your wonderful session.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the wonderful session on getting the attention of today's consumer. I must say it was very insightful. We'll now have a picture of all our panelists clicked together. And I would like to call upon stage Mr. Vinu from Mindshare Media. He'll now be felicitating Mr. V. Narayanan, the CEO, Alliance Advertising. And I also request Mr. Vinu to honor Mr. Muralidhar T, Senior Vice President, Mindshare. Can we have Mr. Vinu on stage, please? I request Mr. Vinu to facilitate and honor Mr. V. Narayanan, the CEO of Alliance Advertising. And also honor Mr. Muralidhar T, the Senior Vice President of Mindshare. May I also request Mr. Anil Airur, Insight Media, to come up on stage, please. He'll now be honoring Mr. Ranjith Kumar M, the Head Marketing, AirAsia. May I also request Mr. Anil Airur to honor Mr. Vaasudev Koppineni, the Head Content Business, Arha Media. Can we cheer them up, guys, please? Thank you so much. I request Mr. Jayakrishna of NBF to come up on stage and honor Mr. Sathyajith Divakaran Nair, the Senior General Manager Digital, MMTV, and the head of ManoramaMAX. Welcome, Mr. Jayakrishna. I also request him to honor the COO of 4th Dimension Media Solutions Private Limited, Mr. Bharath Viswanathan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, gentlemen.